Have you ever just looked at someone and wondered, how can they believe that so strongly? Even when all the evidence seems to point the other way. It's a question that feels more relevant now than ever. Well, today we're going to dig into the hidden wiring of our beliefs, and it all starts on a completely different kind of battlefield.
So, picture this. It's September 1944. World War II is raging, and the Allies come up with this incredibly bold plan called Operation Market Garden. The idea was to build a pathway, a bridge, right into Germany and hopefully end the war fast. But as things started to go wrong, a British general, Frederick Browning, said this one fateful line that would go down in history.
The plan itself was just audacious. Paratroopers would drop in and grab a whole series of bridges, and then tanks and infantry would just race up this one single road to connect with them. Simple, right? Well, the last piece of the puzzle, the final bridge at Arnhem, they just couldn't reach it. It was too ambitious, a connection that just couldn't be made. And that idea, a bridge too far, is exactly what we're talking about today. Which, of course, brings us to our own big, ambitious question. Is trying to build a bridge from the squishy stuff in our heads, our neurons, our brain chemistry, all the way to our complicated, passionate political beliefs, is that also a bridge too far? Well, that's the very challenge neuroscientist Leor Zmigrod took on, trying to build that exact kind of ambitious, maybe even impossible bridge. So where do you even begin to build something like that? Well, the very first step is to change how we think about the problem. We have to stop focusing so much on the content of our beliefs and start thinking about what ideology really even is. Okay, so this is the big shift in thinking. For, decades, research has been all about the content of what people believe. Are you a fascist, an environmentalist, whatever. But Zmigrod's work says, hey, maybe we're looking in the totally wrong place. The real secret isn't what you believe, it's how you believe it. How rigidly, how inflexibly do you cling to that belief? That rigidity, that's the common thread that runs through all extreme ideologies, no matter what they're. And that leads us to our prime suspect, this psychological trait called cognitive rigidity. The best way to think about it is like your mind's refusal to update its software. The world changes, new information comes out, but a rigid mind just can't adapt. It sticks with the old programming. It is the literal opposite of being mentally flexible. Right, but how in the world do you actually measure something so abstract? How do you measure a mind's rigidity? Well, it turns out psychologists have some really clever tools in their toolkit for doing just that.
In fact, let's try one right now. I want you to think about a brick. Go ahead. Now, how many different uses can you come up with for it? Yeah, you can build a wall, but what about a doorstop, a paperweight, a terrible hammer? This is basically the alternate uses test. The more creative you get, the more answers you come up with, the more mentally flexible you probably are. A really rigid thinker might just get stuck on building.
But what if you want to see this rigidity in action? Well, for that, there's a classic test called the Wisconsin card sorting test. Imagine you're sorting cards by a secret rule, say by their color. You get it right a few times, you're feeling good, and then boom, the rule changes. No warning. Now you're supposed to sort by shape. People with high cognitive rigidity get stuck. They just keep sorting by color, making the same mistake over and over again. They just can't shift gears. Okay, now take a look at this. It's a super famous illusion. What do you see? Is it a rabbit or a duck? Take a second, see if you can find both. So here's the cool part. The test isn't about what you saw first. It's about how quickly and easily your brain can flip between the two, from duck to rabbit and back again. That simple little mental flip is directly tied to cognitive flexibility. A more rigid brain can literally get stuck seeing only the duck or only the rabbit. It gets locked into one version of reality. Okay, so we've established that we can actually measure this rigidity. But where does it come from? To answer that, we have to go deeper. We have to move from the mind's software to the brain's actual hardware. We got to look at the biology. Your brain has something like 80 billion neurons. Just try to wrap your head around that number. It's insane. But a tiny, tiny fraction of those, the ones that use dopamine, have this massive, outsized influence on how we think. And dopamine isn't just the feel-good chemical. It's absolutely critical for things like motivation, learning, and you guessed it, cognitive flexibility. And right here, this is where our bridge really starts to come together. You can think of it as a biological chain reaction. It starts with your genes. A specific one called the COMT gene helps control your dopamine levels. Those dopamine levels in a key part of your brain then set your baseline for cognitive rigidity.
And that baseline, how flexible or inflexible you are naturally, helps determine how likely you are to fall into rigid, black and white ideological thinking. It's a path from your DNA right to your dogma.
But hold on, because this is not a story about being trapped by your biology. Not at all. There's a massive twist. Our bridge has another huge component, and it's the one that can change everything, your environment. The world around us can actually get in there and mess with our brain settings. I mean, just think about it. What happens to your own thinking when you're really stressed out? Or when you feel like you don't have enough of what you need? Or when you feel rejected by your friends or colleagues? The research on this is pretty shocking. So check out what this fascinating study found. Researchers made one group of people feel like resources were plentiful. And their definition of who is in their in-group, who counted as us, was pretty wide. But for the other group, they made them feel a sense of scarcity, and that circle of us just shrank dramatically. They became way more exclusive. Feeling like you don't have enough literally makes our brains more tribal.
And it's not just about scarcity. Other studies have found that even mild stress, like get this, a 15-month-old baby being separated from its mom for just a few minutes, can temporarily make them more cognitively rigid. Being socially rejected does it too. It makes people more attracted to extreme rigid ideas. It's like when we feel threatened by stress or scarcity or rejection, our brain goes into this defensive crouch. It falls back on simpler, black and white, more rigid thinking, almost like a survival instinct.
So, let's circle all the way back to where we started and deliver the verdict. This whole attempt to connect our basic biology to our complex beliefs, was it a bridge too far?
And the answer is no. The bridge can be built. But, and this is a huge but, it's not some simple straight line from A to B. Our ideological thinking is this complex dance between different forces. The foundation is our biology, our genes, our brain chemistry. The structure built on top of that is our natural thinking style, how rigid or flexible we tend to be. But the weather, all that stuff from our environment like stress and scarcity, is constantly pounding on that structure, changing it, reshaping it.
Which leaves us with one last really big question, and this one's for you. Knowing what we now know, that your thinking can be pushed towards rigidity by both your deep-seated biology and whatever's happening in your life right now, how does that change the way you look at your own most deeply held beliefs, the ones you're most certain about? What changes when you see them not just as logical conclusions, but as the product of this incredible, complicated dance between your brain and your world? That's really something to think about.